So good evening, everybody, and welcome. We're so glad you're here to tonight's Business Roundtable. This is recorded, so you'll be able to watch it later. We have the distinguished honor tonight of putting in the hot seat our usual monthly moderator, Mr. Nat Alston. So we're super glad to welcome him to the hot seat at the roundtable tonight. So we're going to be able to ask him questions instead of him asking us questions. So we welcome your participation through the chat and the Q&A. We're excited to have you here tonight and to have Nat here, who has over 45 years of executive level and mid-level human resources experiences in a variety of positions covering such industries as financial services, healthcare, hospitality, food service, food distribution, and higher education, local and state government. So, but before we get started, I just want Nat to share a little bit about where he's been today, and as he is also serves. I think this would be under a volunteer umbrella, possibly, Nat, or on your plate. You can share that with us. He is the executive director of Howard County Center for African American Culture, and so I'm going to have him give you a little background on that before we get started.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Yes, this started off, as I think I shared with you, as a consultancy with the Howard County Center of African American Culture. And about August of last year, they got some funding and decided to offer me the position if I accepted it. And the humor was, it's a part-time pay, but full-time work, as I would say. But they were going through a great deal of struggle with the museum, one, facing COVID, and then unfortunately, about a year or so after that, they experienced a flood that wiped out the entire second and first floor of the museum, and they had to go back and really revamp. So this has basically been a 3-year process to get to where we are right now. And to be the executive director there, taking it to the next level. And today we had our grand opening. And if there's any of you that attended that, it exceeded our wild expectations. We were looking for probably around maybe 25 to 30 people. And lo and behold, I think we got upwards close to 100, which we truly were not expecting at all. But it worked out well. The weather definitely cooperated with us, so we really liked that. And I think really the board, which really was the main group that I wanted to have the focus on, yes, it was standing room only. They were overwhelmed. And I think what we've done, Marcus and I have taken it from just a place that had a collection of artifacts and all from the founder to now a truly, excuse me, to a truly recognized museum now. What I've done is registered us with the Small Museum Association of the country. So now we're part of that Small Museum Association. We've also reached out to the Reginald Lewis Museum in Baltimore, of which, full disclosure, I'm a board member of that. So that helped a great deal in understanding how museums are run from a board standpoint, and even from an executive director standpoint, having been on the search committee for an executive director for the Reginald Lewis Museum and being involved in the strategic direction. So it gave me a little bit more insight, having been there for about 8 or 9 years. So when I took this job over here, we pretty much had to revamp the mission and vision of where we want to go. And today was really the beginning of our new vision, our new mission now as the Howard County Center of African American Culture. So I'm indeed happy that it went well. I was happy that we had more people than we expected, and that from all accounts, the people that were there were very enthusiastic about it and really were welcoming the museum to the Columbia landscape now. So again, our work now is cut out for us because now the expectancy level is higher. And I said that to Marcus. Marcus is our curator, and he is a graduate of Morgan State, Bowie State for one undergrad, and Morgan for his master's. And he is a person now that did his master's dissertation was on African American history in Howard County. So it's very fitting for him to be there. I saw in the chat, where's it located? It's located downtown Columbia, and the address is 5434 Vantage Point Road, and it's right off of Little Patuxent Parkway. I would say probably a half a mile north or half a mile east of the mall. So 5434 Vantage Point Road, Columbia, Maryland. That's where we're located. And really right next door to the Oakland Manor. For people who know Columbia fairly well, we're right next door to the Oakland Manor. So again, we're enthusiastic about it and happy that the grand opening was a success.
And now, can you give us, for those people who might want to come down and visit, the hours that the museum, that the
Sure.
center is open?
Sure. Right now, being that we are still needing more volunteers, we can only open 3 days a week right now. So we're open Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays from 12 to 4. But as we increase our volunteers, and we've got several right now, and if anyone is looking to volunteer, please let me know, and I can put my phone number in the chat too. But as soon as we increase our volunteers there, we'll open up, Nancy, more days of the week and possibly even extend our hours.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I was there, and it truly brought out so many members of the community, and it's really worth please bring your friends and family over to visit. It's a wonderful stop. And I think that we really see Nat everywhere. So he has on the screen there to share with you that he's the president and founder of the Horizons Group, a firm that specializes in human resources, strategic planning, succession planning, talent acquisition, executive search, business coaching, and management leadership development training. So Nat, can you give us a little hint of, you were originally a state police officer, correct? So I want to tell you how you transitioned from state police officer to the president and founder
Nancy,
of the Horizons
I tell you,
Group.
I get that question asked about me, and I don't know how many times that question. Hey, you started off there and you ended up here. It's a long journey, and I don't know if you have that much time, but one of the things that I guess I can say what led me there was really, I wanted to move on, and I didn't subscribe to in my generation, you got into a job and you stayed there. And really what got me into the police department, oddly enough, really was the Vietnam War. I did not want to go into Vietnam. And when I got classified as 1A, I had to make a decision. And that decision at that time, this was back in the 60s, and I'm really dating myself, but back in the 60s, I had to make that decision. And I was riding in Baltimore, and I told my friend, Steve Brown, I never will forget, he was my best man in my wedding. I've got to make a decision. If I go to Vietnam, I just felt that things are not going to go right, and I may not come back, or if I do, I'm not going to be in one sound mind. And I said, I saw a Baltimore City police officer go by, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to join the police department. So I initially wanted to join Baltimore City, but my best friend, who knew me well, he said, that's not you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, knowing you, you're not going to be comfortable in Baltimore City. Why don't you try the state police? And that's it. I said, knowing you, Nat, you want a broader range and all of that. And I said, okay. So we left Baltimore, Nancy, and drove down here to Howard County on Route 1, the Waterloo Barracks right there at 175 and Route 1. It's still there today. And I filled out the application, and that was back in 1968. And 1969, January 3rd, 1969, I went through all the processing of the state police and I got accepted into the state police. Now, let me give you a little bit of a twist too, going back even to the museum. We had a uniform that you probably saw at the museum of Captain Milt Taylor. And Milt Taylor was the first African-American to join the state police. He joined in 1957. And I met him. I came back in 12 years later, 1969, and I knew him well, knew him extremely well. In one sense, he was my supervisor for 2 years. So it was just ironic when I go back to the museum, that's him right there, his uniform and his pictures. And people were asking about him. And I said, this is an individual that I knew personally, and he was the first. And when I joined the state police, I was number 10. But again, knowing that I didn't want to stay there, I moved on after 5 years, went to Prince George's County, stayed there for a while, and then went on to Bowie and became their chief of police in 1979, I think it was. And I was their first police chief. It was a security department. And as crazy as I am, I decided, not a security, we're going to be a full-fledged police department. So I drafted a bill, got it introduced by a state legislator, and got it passed. And we were granted full police powers by the state legislature and signed off by the governor. And if you look at the Maryland archives, it was House Bill 1987, granting Bowie State College as a full police officer, full police force. And I was the one that drafted the bill, had them introduce it into the state legislature, lobbied for it. And at that time, acting Governor Blair Lee signed it into law, and I was their first police chief. So that's it in a quick nutshell as far as law enforcement. After that, I decided to get out and I went into corporate America, working for companies like Hughes Aircraft, which was a government contractor. Stayed there for about 1.5 years because the contract was going to end. And I would say that to me, when you look at on the side here, what I do now in terms of executive coach and been in HR, the company that really set me on a trajectory to finish corporate America as a C-suite executive was Marriott Corporation. I joined them in 1980. Had no clue about hotels other than I lived in them. But that company really set me on a trajectory in terms of knowing human resources as a science and as a profession. I had several mentors there that basically guided me, and it set me on, as I stated earlier, a projection or trajectory to end up leaving corporate America as a C-suite executive in HR. And so I really managed my own career. Once I got to that level with Marriott, I saw vice presidents who looked like me, and I wanted to get there. And I was impatient in doing that. So if it meant I had to change companies to move up that ladder, I did that. So when you read the resume, yeah, I stayed with Marriott, went with Holiday Inns, also worked at Baptist Hospital in Memphis, so I know about healthcare very well. And there was a lady there at the museum that worked in healthcare, and we had a very humorous exchange about my experience working at Baptist Hospital in Memphis. That was a 3,000 bed hospital. And for anyone that is in healthcare that's on the webinar, my boss told me when I walked in there, said, I've got good news and bad news. And I said, what's the good news? The good news, Nat, we've got your office all set up. You're ready to go. And everything is a go. I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, JACO is here. And I didn't have a clue what JACO was. But JACO for healthcare is the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals. And for our size, JACO stayed there for 3 months. That was my onboardingness. So I teased the lady today at the museum. She smiled. I said, JACO is nothing you can tell me about hospitals that I don't know now, because Jaco gave me a trial by fire. So I was there as their director. And then subsequently, when you look at the resume, I moved around, but I never lost sight that I wanted to get to that vice presidency of HR. So it took me to healthcare, took me to food service distribution, back to Marriott. My old boss called me back and I went back to Marriott, left there in about 2 or 3 years, and then got a regional HR position there with a food service management company, and then reached the pinnacle of what I wanted to do. My dream was to be an HR director. I got a search firm who contacted me and asked me, would I be interested in being a vice president for the State Employees Credit Union here in Maryland? And I said, yes, put my name in the ring. And lo and behold, I was offered that position as their VP of HR, and I'd accomplished my goal and stayed there, Nancy, for about 5 years, and decided back in 2000, I wanted to launch my own company. And so that's it in a quick nutshell of how I made that transition. Yeah.
So now I know that you, when we switch over to talking about the Ujamaa Business Roundtable, mentorship is so important, and I know that you act as a mentor to so many people. Can you talk a little bit about the mentors that have been influential in your life and in your
Oh,
career
absolutely.
trajectory?
Absolutely. There's 2, maybe 3 people that I looked at as critical to me in terms of my career. In the state police, I also was doing recruitment down there, and I was their first African-American recruiter for the state police. And back to your question, the person that really set me on the HR side of, or what we would call recruitment or talent acquisition, was a gentleman by the name of Lieutenant James Jones. And he basically mentored me while I was in the state police. Really admired him and always kept in touch with him till he passed. And his daughter called me and I attended his funeral, but I told her he was the one that really set me on the course of HR, even though it was a specific task, a specific function. The next person that really, I guess you can say, I admired throughout the entire time was a gentleman by the name of James Bud Ward. And he was the executive vice president for Marriott Hotels in the HR arena. And he was their first African-American to join Marriott. And he imparted on me some questions and some wisdom that I had never forgotten. And ironically, I kept in touch with him until about 3 years ago when he passed at the age of 96. And he still was remaining to me as a dear friend and a strong mentor. So he was the first real person in the corporate life that would ask me 2 questions. One, Nat, what's your plan? And he would drive me up a wall, Nancy, asking me, what do you mean, what's my plan? And then when it finally, the light bulb went on, I said, oh, now I got it. His next question is, are you working it? And then the third person that I'll never forget too is a guy by the name of Cliff Cole in Greenville, South Carolina. He worked for Marriott, Service America down there. And he basically asked me the same thing in a different vein. He said, what's your ultimate goal? And I said, Cliff, I want to get to the level of vice president where you are. And during that mentorship, he drew 7 circles. Never will forget that either. He drew 7 circles and he said, this is HR. And those circles were recruitment, labor relations, employee relations, training, compensation, benefits. And I think the third one, I can't remember the 7th one, but anyway, he drew those circles, 7 of them, and he posed this to me. He said, Nat, if these circles were buckets and experience was water, fill them. and I didn't have at least 3 to 4 buckets that were empty. So I had to go out and get experience in those other buckets, which I did. And when I got the position at State Employees Credit Union, he was the first person I called. And I said, Cliff, the buckets now have water. And he said, fine. Now let's take it to the next level. Make sure that those buckets stay filled with water. So those were the 3, I guess, I can identify as people that were critical in my life: James Jones, Bud Ward, and Cliff Cole. Yeah.
Well,
So I would recommend for anyone, really, and I still do it now, have a mentor. These were my 3 during that time. And I stayed in touch with them, even though I wasn't working with them or they and their companies. I stayed in touch with them.
So as far as mentorship here, and you're talking about filling these buckets with water, what do you see in your experience mentoring people and helping people out in your business and things that you do that people are lacking the most? What is the thing that people are just that we need to work on the most, that you see that people need to work on?
I think people need to really work on one basic thing: skills you can acquire. But I think the most essential ingredient that Bud Ward taught me was your people skills. You may be the best person and technically and all, but your people skills are critical, because people want to be around people that they like. People want to mentor people that have those people skills, that you can interact with people on all different levels. And that's what Marriott taught me, how to interact with the general managers, but also the housekeepers. And so I would say, Nancy, the people skills. One of the things that, again, cutting my teeth at Marriott, they would ask us, who's the most important person in the food and beverage? Most people would think, oh, the executive chef. Marriott always said the dishwasher. How do you interact with that dishwasher? Or who's the most important person in housekeeping? Hey, it's the housekeeper. Because we would say in the hotels, sales and marketing get you in the hotel the first time. Housekeeping brings you back. So I would say to anyone, definitely in terms of what's the most critical attribute or skill set or knowledge you should have, is that people interaction. Be able to relate or meet people where they are, but have those people skills, because those are the ones that basically carry you on. I mean, I was a regional HR director for a food service management company, for an example, and I had 16 states and 8,000 employees. And some of them were down in Tennessee, Maine, and I was the only person of color. And I never will forget this dear friend of mine. We're still friends. Joe Landis was down in Blunttville, Tennessee, and I was the first person of color he'd ever seen. Well, Joe and I became very good friends because what brought us together was he loved baseball, and so did I. So when he came up here to Baltimore, I got him tickets to the Orioles game. We sat there and watched the baseball game. And from that on, hey, we became lifelong friends because we had a common bond in there. So again, it's finding out what people, no matter what, those people skills. I think that's what has basically been something in my career or in my psyche that has taken me to where I am now, is the people skills.
That's great, and and you can always improve on those as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you got to sharpen the saw in that, and it's a point of understanding different people's cultures from where they are. Marriott took me all over the country, so I've got friends up there in Washington State, in Snohomish, Washington. I've been to Moscow, Idaho. And people said, Moscow, Idaho. Yeah, I've been up to Moscow, Idaho, all the way down to the Florida Keys. And even up to a place called Moses Lake, Maine. So you get up there and you start just communicating and talking to people and being open and honest. And like I said, I've got friends in all those four corners, from San Diego, California on one end to Moses Lake in Maine, and from Bellingham, Washington on the West Coast all the way down to the Florida Keys. But each of the folks have different cultures. And one of the things that, again, cutting my teeth with Marriott, we were taught to understand people's cultures. And I think that's something, once you understand the people's cultures and you can relate to them, they start opening up to you.
That's excellent. Now, in starting your own business, we have a lot of people on here that are either starting their own business or want to start their own business. So you went from the police force to working in corporate America to now being in business for yourself. What were some of your struggles early on, or what was something that you wish you had known that you know now when you started with your own business?
That's a good question, and it's hard somewhat to answer, I guess, really. When I started, I basically started as pure HR. I wanted to be a senior level HR consultant, talking to or having clients that needed that outsourced. So that's where I started. So probably to answer that, I've evolved to where I am now. And probably, again, this was a learning curve for me. Once I got in, I found that other things I needed to acquire, the nonprofit, the business coaching, and all. So thinking pure HR was going to be it, and then having to adjust. I think not so much learning, but just having to adjust to the change. Because 20 some odd years ago, the internet was just coming on. I mean, really in its infancy stage. So that was an adjustment. And when I did start on my own, not knowing, really probably just taking the plunge, and my wife thought I was crazy. Hey, wait a minute, you taking this plunge right now? And I said to her, if I couldn't make it, I'll go back inside. And there was a time that I did go back inside for about 6 or 7 months, got another contract, went back out, and never looked back. Never looked back. So that's a good question, really. I think really what I can answer that in saying that I basically adapted to the changes that were occurring all the time. And I think that's one of the things too, that I wasn't stuck in one particular avenue or one particular form of the job. I evolved where the business evolved. I moved away from possibly doing just pure HR, but then started picking up the executive search, the executive coaching, because I found that I was running into people that needed that and needed that C-suite perspective sometimes, or that mentoring. And then also the leadership in there. I'm a student of two people in there, John Maxwell, his 5 principles of leadership, and then Robert Greenleaf, servant leadership. And I'm reading now, I think it's Hugh Mitchell, transformational leadership. And I think that's one of the things that when you're in that position as a title, but you really don't know what that position really means from a people standpoint. Yeah, I'm in there, so you got to follow me. But hey, if you really treat leadership well, after reading Maxwell and studying him, people will follow you because of who you are and what you mean. So that was something that I had to evolve into. Yeah.
So being able to pivot, having family support,
Yeah.
And being a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those
those are critical things. You're absolutely right. A lifelong learner. And one of the critical things in that learning is the ability to change, not being stuck. Oh, we did it this way back in 2021, or we did it in 2001. No, things have changed. I think for me as a baby boomer, one of the things that I really said to people my age and that I embrace technology. That was one of the things that I said during my whole entire years of being in the business. I've always embraced technology. So now we're looking at Zoom. Zoom wasn't here 3-4 years ago. So embracing the whole aspect of a virtual platform, not just Zoom, but Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, WebEx. I mean, I've got clients on all of those platforms. So by having a mental set of embracing technology, I was able to use your term, able to pivot, do the same things, but now on a different platform with different people. It's opened up a wider client base where I don't have to work on or work with people that's in my geographic area. I've got now clients that out in the West Coast or in Florida. So through this digital platform, I can perform those duties without having to visually, person to person, see that person. So being adaptable to change, embracing technology, that's been really one of the key areas that helped me to continue.
Yeah, and adapting to change and embracing technologies is something that we all had to do through the pandemic. So did you have any pandemic dips, or what was your, or were you able to just, keep transitioning through successfully?
Yeah, I was able to, again, going back, because I always remember coming up, March being tomorrow, the 1st of March, March 20th, 2023 will be 3 years, because I shut down, not March 14th, I'm sorry, March 14th, 2020. Shut down where everything was person to person or telephone call, and COVID hit, we had to pivot. And so certain people, we had to learn now a whole new way of delivering our services with these digital platforms out there now. So a lot of the coaching, or let's say executive search, that I would probably have to do with clients that were here in this DMV area, now with COVID, that changed. And then embracing the technology, it opened up a lot more opportunities. So embracing that change and being able to adapt to that, because embracing it is one thing, being able to adapt to it is another. And again, now with this digital platform, I don't think we'll go back to where it was before. But this was something that, again, being a baby boomer helped me along. Yeah.
So then you also went out and you saw a need, and you started the Ujamaa Business Roundtable. So can you tell us a little about what prompted you to start that? Were you just bored, or did you, you seem to always be juggling a lot of things on your plate, as we talked about before. So, and you're always willing to add more to that plate. So,
yeah,
what was your draw
that
to
happened
starting
about
the roundtable?
17 years ago. And I just had a group of friends networking. We were networking. This was before Facebook. I think it was before Instagram, before LinkedIn, and LinkedIn was just coming on. And we were basically meeting. And most of those people, my friends, were starting their own business. I'd been in business maybe for about 4 or 5 years, but they were basically still struggling in the sense of doing the day-to-day work. And if anything, my problem probably was, back in that day, I was always looking at it from a C-suite senior level, and started talking to them and doing some mentoring, and found out that really they were deficient in certain areas. Those areas may have been not having a banker, or not having an accountant, because working in a corporate environment, you've got the CFO over here, you've got the director of marketing, you've got IT. So I was used to those people being in my C-suite circle. And so when we started talking about anything far as maybe strategic planning, those people were in that circle, and their expertise I looked at and gleaned from. So when I looked at that entrepreneur, that person that's starting the business, they lacked that. They lacked the person that was maybe the financial person or the marketing person or whatever. And I started to saying, hey, we've got to come together, and these are certain things that you got to have when you're starting your business, or at least have them on speed dial where you could build those relationships. Because when I did start my business, those are the people I went out there and sought. I had an accountant. Still have him right now. He's been with me for 20 some odd years. So his family grow. So these became my friends. So I was imparting what I was used to on a corporate level and saying, hey, you got to have that now on an entrepreneurial level. You've got to have your accountant. You just can't be working on QuickBooks. You got to have a tax accountant. You got to have a banker. I came out of that financial services, like I said, with the credit union, even though people would say, well, you're a credit union. We were a bank. We didn't pay taxes, but basically we were a bank. And I said, I've got to have a banker. And so I would ask them, who's your banker? They would tell me, well, I bank at such and such. I said, no, you need to have a relationship with a banker, a person. Because again, I was one of those lifelong learners. And when I joined the credit union as their VP of HR, I also took courses that were totally unrelated to HR that most people wouldn't take. I took, when we wanted to grow, for an example, I then went to a 3-4 day course up in Boston on mergers and acquisitions. That taught me how companies either will acquire companies or what the criteria is for merging companies. Also, when we talked about banking, I went to a school called the Cohen Brown School of Relationship Banking. So I understood now what relationship banking was all about. So all that knowledge, I basically, Nancy, would pass on to this group, and it just grew. And it grew because, one, I became a commissioner with the Howard County Equal Business Opportunity Commission, where I was part of the certification of women-owned and minority-owned businesses to do business in the county. And once I started to talk to these people, and many of them are part of our Ujamaa Business Roundtable, I found out that they didn't have that expertise, that they needed that. So I said, okay, let me put this together. And we struggled in the beginning in terms of getting the members in there to see the bigger picture, because this is something that you just don't turn the light switch on. In a lot of cases, it's a journey to get them to that point. And so I'm always, in this case, really playing that long game, and decided, hey, we got to stick with it. And now you've seen it, it's grown, and we got some great members in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you talk about the importance of lifelong learning and then networking, because there are some things that you just can't learn from a book. It's that people experience that get you
Absolutely.
in networking. So can you talk a little bit about how does someone who doesn't have any experience in networking, where can they start?
Well, I would say, one, if you're not, and I'm going to use now a Myers-Briggs a little bit. Networking, you got to, if you're an extrovert, it should come pretty easy. If you're an introvert, you got to come out of that shell. And I always say it's like a turtle. The turtle doesn't move until he or she stick their neck out. And you got to stick your neck out and start to move. So really start small, but you've got to build those relationships and networking. Now it's a little bit easier because you've got Zoom, you've got LinkedIn, you've got some of the social media. But also, once you get that social media, you've got to have that person to person. And in order to grow, you've got to network. So again, get out of that comfort zone if you're there. For me, hey, I'll work a room. You put me in that room that I don't know anybody, in a half an hour, I'm going to at least know half of the people that's in there. But that's me. So I say, as an entrepreneur, I coach folks, if you're not an extrovert, you've got to get comfortable being that. You can go back to being that introvert, but you've got to network. It's relationships out there. That's how I grow my business. And I think that's how our Ujamaa Business Roundtable is the same way. You've got to build those relationships in there. And as a CEO or owner, you've got to spend that time developing those networks. I always say contacts become contracts. You develop those contacts, they become contracts. And it's not a one and done. You've got to nurture those relationships. And it may not materialize now, but it may materialize a year from now, 2 years from now. And you never know. I always had a goal of wanting to meet at least 20 to 25 new people a month. That was always my goal. So that forced me to join organizations, for an example. Having been one of the founders of the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources, which is NAAAHR. I joined that, and one of the founders 25 years ago, we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary here in Baltimore. Well, that has helped me grow my network on LinkedIn to well over 3,000 people. But that's what you have to do, is go out there, join organizations, get involved, join boards. I join boards, as I mentioned to you. How do I network? I join a board. I'm on the Reginald Lewis Museum board. I also was involved in my school's alumni association. So again, start looking at these organizations that you can be part of and start expanding your network that way, because you never know what happens. And share your information so people will call you and say, hey, I've got something for you. Would you take a look at it? So build those relationships, really. That's what I said earlier when you asked me earlier, people skills. Develop those relationships and nurture them. And with this social media, you can really do it, and do it on a continuous basis, even though you're not seeing the person in a lot of cases face to face. I'll use you as an example. We met how? Online. And for about, what, a year, that's all we knew during COVID. But we kept that relationship going monthly till we finally met each other face to face.
Yeah.
But that's how.
I think it was last February. So I
Yeah.
love that analogy of the, sticking your head out of that turtle shell to be able to move forward. And then
Yeah.
also kind of that belief that people are, there are people out there that are willing to help you. I mean, I think that's what you always have to remember, and share their experiences, which is what we've learned, through the roundtable, is people sharing, the things that worked, the things that didn't work. And so, you have to open yourself up to that, kind of be a little bit vulnerable, and then but there are good networking places out there. So tell us a little bit about some of the members of the Ujamaa Business Roundtable, how you meet, and how you can help people through that roundtable.
Sure. Well, we've got, oh goodness, probably about 13, 14 members now. I haven't really gone down the list, but we've got a variety of members, really. Several of them are on tonight. And how I met a lot of them through, again, networking, getting involved in various organizations, various groups and all. So that has helped. And then once I meet the person, and particularly if he or she has a business, one of the first things I want to do is get them registered through the Howard County Equal Business Opportunity Commission. And a lot of times also I get businesses from referrals, people that sign up. And as a commissioner, we have to evaluate them. Do they meet the criteria set forth by the county? And we end up building a rapport on that. And from that, I invite them to attend a meeting, see if they like it. If they do, then we can talk to them about becoming a member. So again, I try to be in areas that are going to open up doors for me to network with people on a constant basis. And I can't stress that enough. I got involved on the Equal Business Opportunity Commission as a commissioner. I've been there now for 10 years. That has helped fuel membership in the Ujamaa Business Roundtable. Some have come, some have gone because of their businesses, but many of them have stayed. And so we continuously to grow. The pressure is on me to make the roundtable as relevant as possible. And I'm always thinking about ways, how can I make sure that the member joins our organization, that he or she is going to get information out of it. But at the same time, encouraging them that you get what you put in. You got to network within the organization, get to know the people. You know, I know Faleo and Shea Radiance. There's Lee Putney who does our Shea Water. I asked, you got it. I asked Lee today, a couple weeks ago, Lee, can you donate some water to the museum because I want to highlight your business there? And he had a lot of people there. We had a case and the address is right there, our Shea Water. So I try to make sure that, hey, these are things that we want to do to help you grow your business. So again, it's networking in there, sharing those relationships. And Nancy, in a couple of cases too, if you can form a joint venture, that's what we can do, is form a joint venture. One of my Ujamaa members who left to go back inside, and I'll use him as an example, he was the National Association president of the National Association of Black Accountants. That's Calvin Harris. And he's a certified public CPA, done extremely well. And he was part of our Ujamaa Business Roundtable before he went back inside with some great opportunities. But we formed a joint venture to go after a contract. He had the financial side, I had the human resources side. So we formed a joint venture, the Horizons Group and Harvin Consulting, we call us the 2 H's, and we went after that particular contract. We made the bid, we didn't get it, but it showed the members of the roundtable, hey, I don't have to operate in a silo. Calvin had a specific skill, a specific business set. I had one. So we formed that and went after a contract in Virginia. So those are things that we try to encourage around there. Let me go to one. Dale was saying too, a willingness to relocate and move to numerous jobs up the corporate ladder. Yes, Dale, that's what I had to do also. I knew if I stayed at Marriott, it would take me a little, I was impatient. Let me put it that way. I was impatient. I wanted to move up that ladder in a faster pace. So again, networking. How I got to Holiday Inns in their Crown Plaza division, I networked with a corporate recruiter down there. And at the time she asked me, would I relocate to Tennessee? I said, oh, for the right offer, I will. So I went down to Holiday Inns. That didn't turn out too well because the Crown Plaza division bellied up. But here again, networking. What did I have? I was in church one day and was out of the job because they had downsized. And I told my wife, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody I'm out of a job. And I tell you to this day, Nancy and Dale, thank goodness she didn't listen to me. Because she shared it with a individual whose last name was Mitchell. She shared it with him. 2 weeks later, I'm at Baptist Memorial Hospital through networking. So that taught me, I said, Mary, if it ever happens again, I want you to have a neon sign saying, Nat's looking for work. So again, that's one of the things that I would say, but it served me well because I wanted to relocate. And I still say now, when you say how important was it then and does it continue to be? I think so. I think it was important to me to keep what I call now a free agent mind. And I use a football and baseball, particularly football analogy. I now keep my mind open as a free agent. Have skills, will travel. So we relocated from Maryland to Tennessee, from Tennessee to South Carolina, and from South Carolina back here to Maryland 30 some odd years ago. But I changed jobs also during that time. So again, I still think it's still important now. And when you look at in the sports, particularly football and baseball, what are they doing? They're trading people. And after they declare themselves as a free agent, they're moving. we got to do that same thing sometimes, because if it helps you to accomplish your ultimate goal of maybe financial security, it is, in my case, it was that plus a different skill set, a different environment, then be willing to move, be willing to open up for new opportunities. That's what I would say, even as an entrepreneur. Don't lock yourself into just one thing. Look at other opportunities out there. As you said, Nancy, be a continuous learner, learn new opportunities. I'm now looking at to be a retirement coach, because we baby boomers are retiring. I'm not getting into the financial side of it, but the psychological side of retirement, even though that R word is not in my vocabulary at all.
I was going to say.
But back to Dale's point, we got people who are retiring, and are they financially ready to retire? And then if they are, okay, what are the psychological aspects of retirement? You've been in a job for 20, 30 years, and the only contacts that you have are the people at work. Well, you're not there anymore. So what do you do now? Do you find something that's going to stimulate your passion again? So I'm looking at that now and saying, okay, Nat, you're evolving now. How can I help people who are retiring from jobs? And we talked about the great retirement. How can I help them psychologically make that adjustment? Yeah, they're financially secure, but guess what? They're still maybe not secure in terms of their people interaction, their contacts. Because you know, and I know, in the Baltimore market, which is different than others, once you stay on a job, you're rewarded for length of service, 20, 30, 40 years. I talked to a guy that worked in the State Highway Administration. He'd been there for 50 years, and that's all he knew. So when he did leave, all his friends were still there. And he had to really suffered from some type of depression, because that job was his life. That job defined who he was or who he is. And I said, that's the wrong way to go. Expand your network outside of your job. And that's what I've done, really, is expand my network on all different levels. And that keeps you going and keeps you motivated.
So Nat, as kind of a closing question, we focus a lot on, at the roundtable that we do here that you do here with the library with us on local businesses in Howard County. So what are the benefits of taking that leap or that job change in Howard County? And what advice do you have? We have a question in the chat from Vanessa about what advice do you have for those people that are working in government, which is so many of the jobs from this area?
Good question. Government. I still would say, again, going back to what Bud Ward used to tell me, Vanessa, what's your plan? What's your plan, even in government? Because unfortunately in government, you can stay put for years, years and years. And if that's your security, okay. But if you really want to move up, it may end up being not just moving up, but moving laterally and then moving up. But have a plan, have a career plan. What's your long-term plan in terms of your career? And really, I go back to the first one that I used to say all the time: select a career that you care about. And maybe select a job that you care about, that you have the passion to do, that you love doing. Love what you do and do what you love. And if it means you've got it now, and particularly now with the job market being like it is, you've got a lot more opportunities to make that change. And then this is back to, even, I think, get a little plug with Dale. You create your own retirement strategy. In the old days, you would do that and, oh, I got a pension or I've got a 401k, but and you know, in this area, Nancy, it's always, oh, I got a pension. Yeah, that's fine. But if your plan is to move on and maybe move to another job that's going to offer you a lot more money or a lot more skill set, keep that open mind of free agency. So you can. And that's what I did. I basically left and said, look, I can build my own financial security by working for myself. And I always joke, I said, I guess I like the job because I like the boss. But that's what I would say in government. Look at even now in state government and local government, they're changing the rules now. Where before, if you needed a college education, you couldn't get in. Now they're changing the rules because that person in government is a free agent. So keep a free agent mind, and you don't have to stay in one particular agency, but move. And, you look at, I'm going to use Nancy again, your boss, Tanya. Tanya came from Oakland, California, here to Howard County. So she relocated, got a better opportunity, and she's with got to put the plug in there. She's with one of the best library systems in the country. But she decided to make that move from Oakland to here. Dr. Daria Willis, who's our new president of Howard County Community College, back to Dale's moving up that corporate ladder. She moved from Seattle, Washington to here for a better opportunity. Both were higher education, but she took the risk and said, I'm going to change now. So again, I hope I'm answering your question by giving you an example that if there's an opportunity for you to move, take that opportunity and do it.
That's really great advice. I think that it's really comes back to that wonderful analogy again about the turtle is sticking your head out there to either, look for new opportunities or new connections with people, and start having these conversations. Now, you are just a wonder of so many talents. And we really appreciate you sharing your story with us tonight. We know you've had a really busy day, and I don't think after hearing you talk and all your experiences that you live the way you say. So I don't think any of us are surprised by the number of people that were at the opening of the Howard County Center for African American Culture, because somehow you had touched them at some point in their lives. So that's what makes it so wonderful, is the rewards that come from being, if it's out of your comfort zone or in your comfort zone, reaching out to people, making those connections, sticking your head out, looking for other opportunities, and taking that leap into possibly starting your own business. So we want to thank Nat tonight for sharing his wonderful story with us, for spending, especially after a long day of wonderfulness.
No, thank you, Nancy. Thank
we
you
really
so much.
appreciate
Really,
it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you next month.
Yes, I will be there. So hold on, we did have two. We got the questions from the chat, from the Q&A too, about the willingness to relocate and about how people having the difficulty of retiring on a fixed income too. So that that's.
Yeah, that is very true. And I think really what I would say in closing too, and Dale would love this also. Once I think the word retirement needs to go away. I really do. And I think that's been that baby boomer and World War II mindset. Oh, you're going to retire, lay back, sit back and relax. You're fine. No, find something else if it's a side gig or whatever. And I think people can live longer if they're doing something that they love and love what they're doing. So again, Dale, I agree with you. People can live longer, and they can't ill afford to retire on a fixed income. Yeah, Social Security or their 401k is fixed. Yes, that's a trend that's changing now. You got to go out here, and the main thing you got to manage is your income and your health. You've got to look at that. And at my age now, that's the same thing I'm looking at. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And by doing that, yeah, the income is there because I'm trying my best. And I say that to everyone, remain relevant, continuous learning, be willing to change. I'm not stuck in mud or stuck in cement. I always say I'm stuck in jello and that wiggles around a little bit, but I'm not in cement. And be willing to receive openness from any and everyone. I'm learning from my 16-year-old grandson on some new technology. I'm learning from my daughter and my son. So continuous learning, that learning can come from each and every one, regardless of their age. Just be open to receive it.
So thank you again, Nat. I'm going to leave you with all this image in your head of a turtle stuck in jello so that you can go out and branch out. We all can't have resumes that are 10 pages long like our friend Nat. I would hate to have them condense that into one page. It would be very, very difficult to do.
It's difficult.
So once again, we're going to give Nat back his evening, or what's left of it. Thank him so much for joining us tonight. We will hopefully see you all next month. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all.